Alrighty folks, welcome back to another episode here where I am playing through as the nation of Austria, and we're going to be absolutely killing it. Of course, my priority here today is to take back Constantinople, and the reason is because I have approximately, I think, 5 years. No, it was 1509. I've actually got 8 years from now until the Byzantine nation loses its core over Constantinople. And I desperately want to use the reconquest against the Ottomans. I did end up piecing them out with only 2 provinces. However, I told myself, no matter what happens, I'm going to go in there and do not let it be unprioritized, even if something like what you can see right now happens, which is that the Protestant Reformation forms. Protestant Reformation has just recently formed in the nation of Austria, which I don't know how to pronounce their name, and not a bad nation for it to spawn in because he is a one-province minor, which means, of course, that enforce religion on him. Feeling pretty good about that. My tactic at the time, I actually keep looking over at him. I think it's because he's involved in a war this game, if my memory serves me right. But he was not converting his religion despite being 100% Protestant. So he's just been pieced out apparently. No, he's still in a war, never mind. So that's what I'm investigating right now. You can see that it's spawned, and that's a little bit agitating because I would be happy to go straight in against him, and despite him having one ally by the looks of things, it would have been a nice and easy decisive victory, and I would have been able to enforce religion on him. But the fact that he's not Protestant yet, the first the center spawns regardless of the religion of the host, it is converting neighboring provinces within inside the empire, and therefore potentially converting neighboring princes. However, my truce just came up with the Ottomans, and they are involved in a war with the Mamluks. Now, the Mamluks have been defeated once before, but of course, the fact that he's at war with them means that his troops are not here on the Balkan side. Now, at this stage, guys, we obviously have the Swedish, the Norwegians. You can see, I think that's 10k up there. Swedes and a nice general who just ever so happen to be on my land. They're probably going to be integrated before the time this war is over. But of course, I'm going to inherit each of those Swedish troops. The Ottomans have vassalized Wallachia. I have managed to call in the Iberians. However, if I remember correctly, the Ottomans' allies were both Tunisia and Morocco, I think, which, yeah, I mean, the Iberians are obviously much more powerful as well as Naples combined, but the AI does have a tendency to be pretty derpy, and if I do recall myself, Castile gets sort of played around a little bit, kited around. He's coming over to the Balkan side, his land's being sieged up, so it's a bit of a nuisance. It is what it is. I can see here that the Achia, whichever nation they're actually called, has converted to Protestant religion. However, I do feel like I'm preoccupied. I'm not actually too worried about the Protestant Reformation, believe it or not, and I'm going to be focusing my efforts here on finishing the Ottomans. While his troops are out eastward, guys, I'm using every day, every week, and every month as wisely as possible. I'm trying to really carpet siege him, despite being quite blocked up with which provinces, in fact, we can actually obtain due to his forts. He's got quite a few forts here, but I'm doing my best. I'm also doing my best to progress on each fort. And yeah, it's pretty interesting. If I do recall, I was able to call the Commonwealth in as well. I think I had to promise them land, though. Thankfully, my favors were very high with him, that I felt like I think what's actually happened here is that the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth has some debt. They have financial issues, and it's not that they don't want to join, it's that they don't want to fight the war due to them being in debt. I think I did end up offering them provinces, offering them land, because that kind of, they're more likely to join. They will join if I offer them land, but then I had to actually, utilize my favors to build trust with him after the war in order to remain an ally, because he hated me at that point. But the way that I looked at it is that I utilized the PLC against the Ottomans, and that was the only threat to me at this stage of the game. So they're not called in yet. Now, I did decide to go ahead and no CB this nation as well, and his little friend there, I think it was Liège, however you pronounce them, did not actually back him up, and so I thought, forget it. That's a good time to go in against him. No CB him there for 1 stability, as that was the quickest way to get involved into a war with him. Very often people talk about, and why didn't I mention in my sort of Austrian game, where I give some sort of tips about the Protestant Reformation, why didn't I mention attacking nations' allies in order to get to war with them? The reason I actually didn't mention that is because that's been the standard method for a long time to get involved in a war with a centre of Reformation and to kind of enforce it. I thought that was pretty self-explanatory, and in my case, this nation doesn't actually have any allies whatsoever. But the fact that I'm just 1v1ing him and he's such a small guy, you can see there that I recruited some troops up just to go deal with him simultaneously, hoping to actually bring those troops over to participate in this war as well, once I've sieged down his capital. But I did want to, considering it was just so easy there, he has no allies, I did want to go in and knock out that Centre of Reformation ASAP. So I am doing that despite being at war with the mighty Ottomans. Now the Ottomans, ideally, after this episode, and if you guys are in a similar situation, feeding back all of Byzantium, ideally they will not be that great after this war. The capital of Wallachia falling there, which is great because it gives me access into more Balkan land, occupying as much as I can to, of course, increase his war exhaustion and lower his enthusiasm, but that also gives me the opportunity to start on both his capital and his old capital, Edirne, which I'm probably mispronouncing. And that's the spot that I like to be in, really, because the terrain is not that crazy. You don't get a massive disadvantage usually. And you can station a tremendous amount of troops to be able to reinforce either of the stacks that he goes into. Now, in my case, I think I had some good generals. My army tradition, just about everything was high. My prestige was higher than his. It's at a point in the game where his troops are not that much better than yours. So Sweden integrated there feels really good, man. That's going to be all those lovely provinces to be added to the HRE, and I've spoken about this before, but it just so happens in my case that I have Gotland because it defected from Denmark when he was fighting the war, as he was so war-ravaged from such a long war to Sweden, which means because the HRE has spread out into the original Teutonic region, the Prussian region, it means that I can just straight up add those provinces through Gotland into Scandinavia to the Holy Roman Empire I'm talking about. In your case, guys, make sure that if you're doing that tactic and you want to add land to the empire, that you have access to it, basically, which is pretty self-explanatory. It's going to usually take another war. People talking this game about, I think Bavaria PU'd Denmark this game, and people talking about like how crazy that was, like, lol, I can take Denmark as a personal union or steal them from Bavaria. Although that might appear to be the case, I don't 100% recall the details, guys. But I think Bavaria lost the union very quickly. I think his ruler was elderly when he got the union, and he just passed away and lost the union of Denmark. So I wasn't able to steal Denmark as well. And I'm not going to lie, I don't 100% recall how it went down exactly, but I do recall having the same thought and feeling like, oh, wow, I can just be vassalize Denmark as well from stealing from Bavaria and then integrate it within the 10-year period. Either way, guys, the first Centre of Reformation disposed of very swiftly, and if I look around at the religious map, as I do at some point and have been, his neighbor Luxembourg has converted to Protestant, which is quite irritating. I think at some point I deal with them, but of course that's going to be the Protestant Reformation is going to be kicking into full force here, and that will be the sort of subject of future episodes. At this point, guys, I've not felt much resistance from the Ottomans. But if we do look down south in Egypt, you'll notice that the Mamluks, if I ever zoom outwards, they are fully sieged down. And there we go. There's some nice Ottoman troops here. At this point, we've got ticking war score going, and he's suffering quite some war exhaustion each month. I was able to defeat him there, so he derped up a bit there and take that province there, their old capital city. It's just Constantinople now. So we're sitting in really good shape. Of course, it does cost a lot of war score to take all of the provinces we need, but thankfully with the reconquest CB, as long as we're handing them over to Byzantium, they do cost 25% less. So you can see there, if you were paying attention, it costs us 75%. So this war is far from over. But yeah, thankfully the capital's going to give us quite some war score, and most likely we're going to be ticking our war score, if not all the way up, quite high up there. And part of the reason we're not getting war score, guys, is I guess the fort maintenance was low. That's what I suppose. But either way, over in Granada, we've actually lost a fort. The Iberians have. And like I said, they were not 100% on point, which is a little bit upsetting. But in other news, guys, we have 100% managed to pay off our debt, which I'm really happy about. And apparently those troops that I used to fight the other war were just mercenaries that I really quickly hired, because we are struggling with our manpower. We have been struggling with our manpower for just about the entire bloody game, because it's been very intense, just back-to-back fighting the wars. But yeah, thankfully it was the war against Venice where we were able to steal everybody's money and war reparations, etc. At this point, I'm feeling pretty economically sound. Somebody asked me in the comments, why do I always go over my Diplo relations slots? I highly recommend that you guys do the same thing, at least in this case. And the reason I go over is because I just find them all so valuable. Our allies are very valuable in terms of building favors, but also preventing anybody from attacking the empire. For example, what if France was to attack the empire right now while I'm fighting a long war against the Ottoman Empire? It would not be ideal, and that is why I have England, Castile, Poland as allies. But of course, each of them we have used their favors, and I intend to build their favors more so, because of course the French are still a powerful nation, and just like the Ottomans are, and their time will come to where we must take them down a notch, right? But in terms of our vassals, it's pretty self-explanatory, don't you guys think? I guess technically I could have pieced out the last war without releasing Serbia, but what I was actually thinking at the time is their province there, that is their now their capital, the Serbian province, you can see, which has a fort, is actually, it has forest, if I recall correctly. And you can see there with my border against the Ottomans, I have 3 forts generating a sort of strong wall against him. And there, each province is mountains, hills, and forest. So that's the main reason I actually took it, is because if I did have to just do a kind of a brute grudge match against the Ottoman Empire, that is actually a really good position to hold. Is most likely he's going to siege some combination of them down, and it just gives us the negative rolls, right, when we go in there. And the idea would be to kind of have the length of war going a little while, and just keep defeating him in decisive victories on those forts, which would obviously raise his war exhaustion, etc., blah, 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 enable us to piece out his allies eventually, and roll over his country given enough time. That's, despite the obvious reason that I took them, I guess I could have delayed it to this war, but it would also cost more war score if I did intend to completely feed Byzantium back and then take another province like inside Bulgaria or Serbia in order to release them as a subject. There's a bloody dog who's been barking this whole time. I hope that's not been picked up on my recording. It's hard for me to say at this stage, but you guys love me. You appreciate me, regardless of the obnoxious dog yapping away. So I think the way that this war goes, apparently I don't call Poland in, eh? I did call them into the previous war. Yay, there's our nice little significant event there that is unique to the Austrians. And we just lost the stability there. Of course, for the price of, I think it's 5% reduced idea cost for the entire game. And of course, the 1 Diplo reputation. So at this point, I'm doing extremely well in terms of my Diplo reputation. Although I did just integrate Sweden. Definitely make sure to be on top of making sure that you're being elected and getting those votes and so on. But what I find usually is that the Austrian Diplo rep is just so high that even when you get the -3 from integrating a nation like that, you still, even without using Diplo relation slots and allying electors, you can acquire their votes very easily. I'm sure most of you know what I'm talking about, those of you who have played the actual Holy Roman Empire yourself. Now, it appears as though somebody just joined the Empire there. I think it was Bar out in the lowlands. Savoy has managed to ravage Burgundy. It doesn't look like there's actually any Burgundy left, unless they're just in that sort of Flemish region where they might be, if I could get a better look. Nope, that's England. Yeah, there doesn't appear to be any Burgundy left after we fought our war against them. There was not much remaining, and nations have annexed them, and I think they do end up adding land to the empire, which is nice. I intended to actually release Burgundy and use that as a nice CB against the French if I had revoked and I had not yet really done away with the French at that stage. Then we could feed the French provinces back to Burgundy and integrate them freely, needless to say. I think that, as you can see, the Ottomans, they did end up getting the vassal over, or the march, and then they make them a vassal over Crimea this game, and that's why he owns this region over here. And Genoa is actually doing well in the region out there, the Crimean region, which is pretty interesting because from my experience, the Genoa, the absolute vast majority of the time, they end up being very stagnant out in that region, if not being destroyed at some point. Very often I find that they attack the Crimea and just lose an offensive war because it's a little bit too much for them to, the AI to manage coming out there, whereas the Crimea just goes straight onto his land and defeats him. But the reason that I'm talking about that is because, of course, he is a member of the Empire, and you guys know the rate. Those of you who have watched the other videos and know exactly what's going on, you know that we're not that far away in terms of years of calling the revoke privilegia, which means, of course, all of that region out there in the Crimean region is going to be our subject, assuming that it remains stable. Now, Lorraine actually annexed, you can see there by the little HRE tab telling me to demand territory. They actually annexed Luxembourg, guys, and my first initial reaction is how rude, we must release an independent prince. But then, of course, it occurred to me that he is a Protestant, and definitely the way that you want to manage that situation is do not release Protestants. He actually eliminated, sure, it's one less free prince, but if that prince was a heretic, then it would actually be giving negative imperial authority. So just on the fly, considering I don't like to manage the situation inside the empire too badly, it's nice that he actually annexed them, and I don't have to worry about it anymore. With that being said, guys, Byzantium is free. And I hope you guys enjoyed. It's pretty self-explanatory that in the future we're going to be attacking and releasing Serbia, and the Ottomans will really struggle to defend. I'll see you next time.